Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking, of course, the brand new game from Activision Blizzard which went live just yesterday. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 has got a new beta, let's have a look at it. No, only joking. Obviously we are talking World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroh. I have been playing it all night. I'm going to be playing it all day. And the thing is, here at Taliesin and Evitel, obviously we make videos about World of Warcraft once or twice a week. So you'd have thought that the opening days of a new expansion would have been prime video territory for us, but generally not actually. Because yes, we are creators, but first and foremost, we are players and fans of the game. And when the new expansion comes out, what we really want to do is just lock the doors, turn down the lights, break open a bottle of wine, order in some pizza, and play the actual shit out of that game. And that was the plan. You weren't going to hear from us until the weekly reset at the weekend. But the thing is, I've now played through the Horde and Alliance introductory scenarios for Battle for Azeroh. I've seen the cinematics that go with them. I'm sure you guys have too. And there's stuff I want to talk about. There's things I want to analyze and point out and get your feedback on, because I think it's actually really interesting how the two sides of the start of this story echo each other and contrast each other and play to the exact same themes. So actually, we are going to make a video and we're going to talk about it right now, and then I'm going to get back to playing the shit out of this game. Because between them, the Horde and Alliance have 3 new in-game cinematics and a couple of really interesting cutscenes as well. So we're not really going to be talking about the scenarios themselves, we'll be doing that in the weekly reset. And this is not a reaction video, obviously we've watched these lots of times before, and if you haven't seen them, this is a terrible way to watch them. We're going to be stopping them, starting them, talking about things. With that being said, join us as we talk the in-game cinematics from the Horde and Alliance intro scenarios to Battle for Azeroth. Okay? Go, 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 go. So we're going to start with the Horde cinematic at first. It's the first one in the timeline. It happens before either of the two Alliance ones. And it's also the most bombastic as well. One of the things I really like about all of these cinematics is how restrained they are. Maybe because these 3 are at the very beginning of the story, the majority of these cinematics that we're going to look at now are also very character driven. Kind of like the Legion epilogue cinematics set in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. Having said that though, there is some pretty spectacular action in this one in particular, because this cinematic starts directly after the Horde introductory scenario. We've just rescued Princess Talanji and Zul from the stockades and escaped the wrath of Jaina Proudmore, who, it's made quite clear, could solo that entire Horde group if she wanted, were it not from the fact that Zul rather sneakily set Stormwind on fire on the way out, which is turning into a bit of a Horde motif really, kind of like a trademark. You know how like the wet bandits in Home Alone, every house they rob, they block the sink and flood the house. The Horde version of that is they just burn cities down. Hey guys, that world tree causing you problems? Burn it. Feel like moving out of your old place? Burn it with blight fire first. Stealthing through a foreign city in the middle of the night? Burn it as you go, why not? And so we begin this scene on the open ocean in the middle of the night.
It appears the Alliance dogs have lost our scent.
Now, the big problem that I have with Nathanos Blightcaller, and one of the reasons I don't think he does the Horde any favours at all, is how flat out, no holds barred, stereotypical, evil his voice sounds. I honestly think it's one of the reasons why the Horde feels so much like the baddies at the moment, because all through the Battle of Lordaeron, you've got Nathanos saying things like, "Your time is up, King Anduin." Honestly, this guy could say anything and it would sound evil. "Happy birthday, mother. I've made you breakfast in bed." Evil. "We all clubbed together and bought lots of presents for the orphanage this Christmas, so no one goes without." Evil. And this is a prime example of that, because when he refers to the Alliance dogs, it sounds just like a standard baddie thing. "Curse you, Alliance dogs." But of course, he's not elaborating here, he's being totally factual. During that scenario, you and your party were running away from Gen Greymane and loads of Gilneans in Worgen form. They literally were Alliance dogs. It's not even really an insult, it's just a fact. It sounds evil when he says it.
Good, good.
And speaking of obviously very evil people, here's Zul. Now obviously I've played beta, I've played beyond this on the live game, I know some of the things that happen in this story. I don't think it's a spoiler to tell you that Zul isn't a nice guy, because Blizzard are not making a secret of it in this cinematic. Anyone who says, good, good, is a baddie. And then there's an interesting bit of dialogue about Sylvanas.
She seems very powerful, certain, in control.
Although we've just rescued them from jail, we're still all kind of at odds a little bit. And each character here is just kind of testing the ground a little bit. So we learn things about Zul in this exchange, but we can see he's also trying to get the measure of Nathanos here too. The way he says he knows Sylvanas is very powerful shows that he values that as a characteristic. But then the pointed way that he says in control is kind of implying to Nathanos that he sees Blightcaller as Sylvanas' lackey, really under the thumb, like a drone, you know? And Nathanos' reaction to this is very
It is an honor to serve my queen.
People are kind of wondering if Nathanos is having doubts about Sylvanas as well. In this sentence, and the way he says it so defiantly, in this moment at least, and the way he says this line, I think he's trying to convince himself that it's an honour to serve his queen. I think he genuinely believes it. And I don't think in this moment there's any problems with the way that Nathanos feels towards Sylvanas. And now the conversation moves to the character who this cinematic is really all about, Princess Talanji. The only character out of any of them, of course, that we are meeting for the very first time right now.
Our king has always found her to be challenging.
And our very first sight of her is appearing through this haze, this mist of kind of ceremonial smoke. Yes, she's got a big fire in the middle of a wooden ship. Yes, recent events that happened just minutes ago have proven how dangerous that can be. No, she doesn't care. And just for fun, notice, if you will, the almost completely used up wide red candle on the top of the idol here. But it's very symbolic, because the Zandalari race have been one that's always been in the game, something very mysterious and enigmatic about them. We've never been to Zandal'alor until now. So her appearing through the haze like that is kind of saying it's time to clear those clouds away from the Zandalari now and see them in all their glory. As she performs her ritual, the fire turns from orange to blue, the two very striking bold colours that form the palette of a lot of the Zandalari colour schemes, but also the two colours that make up Azerite and Azerite fashioned things.
Almighty Rezan.
And so we learn that this ritual is the princess calling on the aid of Rezan. And we can summarise that Rezan is a lower, because we know that's who the trolls worship. And we know that different lower have different functions and different forms. So I imagine the question on everyone's lips at this stage is, what kind of lower is Rezan?
You are the lower of kings and queens.
Cool, he's the lower of kings and queens, which is very fitting, obviously, because Princess Talanji is the princess. She will be the queen of Zandal'alor. Maybe he's got like a cool lion form or something.
My eyes see much.
No, he's a mother-shitting dinosaur. And I know having a T-Rex head in profile with its eye looking out at the side to you like that is just a classic image of a T-Rex. But there are two things it always brings to mind for me. The first is that scene in The Land Before Time when the huge T-Rex eye just opens, takes up the entire screen. And the second is obviously the scene where the T-Rex attacks the children in the car in Jurassic Park. And normally I wouldn't think much of it, but there's a second, even more blatant Jurassic Park reference later that I have to think the team that made this did it on purpose, which is why I love you, Blizz. Just as a side note, and I apologise for this in advance, but it's actually a really bad representation of how Tyrannosaurus Rex would have looked at things, because it kind of suggests that a T-Rex has monocular vision, like a horse, where they look more to the side than straight in front of them. But actually, Tyrannosaurus Rex had flat-up binocular vision, which meant they looked directly ahead of themselves, more like humans. But anyway, that's not important. It's a bit important. And we can see here that there's a pretty straight-up relationship between Talanji and her T-Rex lower. They're on first-name terms here. She's pretty much got him on speed dial, asking him advice whenever she needs it. And he's happy to give it, warning her here of all the many disparate forces and enemies who are out to destroy her. And of course, we instantly think, is this Rezan warning her against Sylvanas' horde and that they're bad news? Or perhaps he's warning her about the blatantly evil Zul, who no one should ever trust? Good, good. And both of those things may be true, but for now at least, there are more pressing matters, because the Alliance fleet is attacking. They've caught up. And it would seem that Zul and Nathanos were so deep in mutually needling conversation that they didn't notice the entire fleet sneaking up on them from behind, because they are caught flat-footed. They're in trouble now.
The sails are dead! We've got no wind!
And the purpose with which Talanji walks out of that doorway there, her eyes aglow with the power of Rastakhan. Like, she doesn't even look around her. She's completely focused, walking up the steps. She already knows exactly what she's going to do. It's almost like her actions aren't entirely her own, and she's currently being possessed by the lower at this stage, borrowing his power. It's so exciting. I love this so much. And her movements in this moment, again, they're very sort of trance-like, you know? She's so completely given over to a higher power than herself at this moment. Because the way the music just cuts out when Rastakhan appears here, leaving that moment of silence to really kind of highlight the awe that is felt when this T-Rex appears in the sky and literally walks on water. And this is the other really blatant Jurassic Park reference. That foot splashing down onto the sea, just like that scene in Jurassic Park where the T-Rex's foot splashes down in the puddle and moves on. What's interesting here is if I was to summon a T-Rex lower to protect me from a huge group of ships, I would kind of expect the T-Rex to attack the enemy ships. It's attacking things that we associate T-Rexes with, and yet here, it's a very protective motion. The lower, despite being very ferocious looking and clearly incredibly powerful, he ferries the boat along and creates distance between it. And we see another mist, like the one we discovered Talanji through at the very beginning of the cinematic. This huge wall of it just forming a barrier across the ocean. And Talanji uses her magic to separate that. And ladies and gentlemen, I give you the island nation of Zandal'alor. And the idea, of course, of an island that we've never seen before being protected, shrouded by mists, is one that we're familiar with in World of Warcraft. And we're actually kind of finished with Talanji's magic here, because that Zandalari navy, those ships, haven't been specifically scrambled to protect this one ship from the Alliance fleet as they came in. They're always there, protecting the coastline of their city. And Talanji knows that. She knows that the second she clears that fog, the Home Guard are going to be there, ready and waiting. And of course, she knows what's going to happen next. Oh yeah, man the defenses, boys. And this shot is just one of the most glorious, beautiful things I've ever seen. These projectiles flowing upwards from every ship at the same time. This is how good and well drilled their navy are. And destroying the Alliance ships behind her. And I love the fact she doesn't even turn around. She's so confident that that's game over. It's like when a basketball player throws a shot and then turns around to accept the praise even before the ball has gone through the hoop. And it's worth pointing out that this moment where we are introduced to the true might of the Zandal'alor, an island we've never actually seen before, the full strength of a navy that we've only really heard about, and that idea is introduced to us in this shot where dawn is literally breaking over the horizon and over Zandal'alor itself. Almost like saying this is the start, the dawn of a whole new era for the Horde. I love this shot here as well, because you can see Nathanos just thinking, wow. Yeah, alright, Sylvanas is not going to be disappointed with these people. And when Talanji says,
We are home.
She's not lying. Welcome to Dazal'alor, your Horde capital city, your actual home for the next 2 years. And so we move on to the first of the Alliance cinematics. And this is where we can start drawing comparisons between the two stories and see how they reference each other, which is something Blizzard love doing in these cinematics and something I love to dig into and see if we can unearth. So having had their chasing fleet destroyed by the Zandalari navy, the Alliance have decided it's probably best if they go to Kul Tiras and try and patch things up with them so they can get a good navy of their own. And so just like the Horde cinematic, we begin here on the open sea at nighttime on a ship which is originally from the nation that we're heading towards. This is Jaina's ghost galleon, her father's ship that we saw her raise from the depths in the Jaina Warbringer, and which we saw her fly into the Battle of Lordaeron for OP laser cannon fun times. Jaina's ship levitation spell, obviously still on cooldown, because here we see it sailing along quite happily, with the Alliance ship alongside, which holds Gen Greymane and his party, those Alliance dogs. Now, we've just pointed out how the Horde cinematic starts in the dead of night and follows the transition into dawn. As you can see, at the very beginning of the Alliance version, at least, it's actually getting darker, because whereas the Horde cinematic shows the might of the Zandalari and it being a very positive thing for the Horde, this is altogether a darker story. And just like Princess Talanji, we are introduced to Jaina with her back to us, working on some magic in her cabin on a ship. Talanji's in the middle of a very shamanistic type ritual. As we can see, Jaina is working on some arcane manuscripts. That's her version of that. But the point is the characters are introduced in almost exactly the same way. These cinematics are about the contrast of two different princesses returning to their two different homes. And this shot is clearly to show us that Jaina is wearing her Kul Tiras pendant and to draw attention to that. But what it draws attention to for me is that Jaina has one free hand and one hand covered in spiky armour, and she chooses the spiky armour hand to write with. Which, I'm sorry, is just asking for trouble. If you ever get a letter from Jaina, which I'm not going to lie, I would really like, and it's got all pierced holes in it, that's why. And check out the fat red candles around her desk that she's using for light here, reminiscent of the red candle on top of the idol in Talanji's room. It's a nice reference. I don't think it particularly means anything though, because the establishment of the candles here is to serve a narrative purpose, which we'll see in just a moment. But we'll see here as the camera zooms in on Jaina at the desk to establish that what's about to happen is very personal to her. We hear a voice. We hear a voice from the other room.
Ahoy, ahoy, sweet daughter of the seas.
Well, you know, Jaina, if you are going to sail around in a psychological ghost galleon, I'm afraid the danger always is that you're going to come across some ghosts, isn't it? This isn't a surprise to anyone, Jaina. But of course, the voice that we can hear is singing a version of Daughter of the Sea. That song that we've established by now is a folk song sung by the people of Kul Tiras about Jaina and her betrayal of Taliesin Proudmore, her father. But here, the lyrics are different. This is the original version of the song, which is almost like a Kul Tira nursery rhyme from a time before her own people changed it to be a warning about Jaina Proudmore.
Ahoy, this child be mine.
And as the male voice joins in with the song, the Kul Tiran emblem comes into focus on the captain's cabin door. Just in case you were still in any doubt over who that male voice belonged to, our focus is literally drawn here to the emblem of the Kul Tiran Admiralty. And that whole sequence where Jaina approaches the door, first our viewpoint from inside the room and glimpsing her in that very limited field of view, and seeing this very eerie, strange light out the back window here, which gives us a hint that this is a very dream-like psychological thing that's happening here rather than it being in real life. To Jaina approaching the door and this close-up of her hand reaching for the handle, to this close-up of Jaina seeing something in the room before we're allowed to see it. These are all shots that you would find just before the scary bit in a horror movie. We know something creepy is going on here.
As stars do shine.
And yes, there is nothing more creepy than children. And you know what? I make no secret of this. Jaina Proudmore is my favourite Warcraft character of all time. I already like her more in Battle for Azeroth than I have at any point throughout Warcraft history. I love that she is a badass 40-year-old woman just working through her shit. I love that Laura Bailey is her voice. And let's not beat around the bush, I love that she's also incredibly hot. Any extreme close-up of Jaina Proudmore is going to be alright with me. And as if we hadn't had enough spooky horror tropes already, the giggling child. But this isn't just any old child, is it? This is a young Jaina Proudmore. It's baby Jaina.
Promise you'll come back?
I'll weather every storm if I know you are waiting for me.
Taliesin says, I will weather any storm if I know you are waiting for me, which proves to be the case. Now, obviously, Taliesin Proudmore turned out to be a massive racist against the Horde, but his motivations for turning up in Theramore, for the ill-fated battle that saw Jaina essentially betray him and his death, he was arriving there to save Jaina from the Horde. He was misguided, but he was being true to the promise that he gives Jaina in this moment. I will weather every storm if I know that you are waiting for me. And of course, the time he died was the time she wasn't there for him. Another thing I find really interesting about this is baby Jaina's outfit. Because Jaina's model and the way it's dressed in Battle for Azeroth is very new. It's obviously a lot less revealing than costumes Jaina has worn in the past. A lot more practical in that respect. She is a 40-year-old woman after all. But also a feeling I get from how she's dressed here is it's a lot more regal. A lot less mage-like. It's a uniform that shows her position socially, the fact that she is admiralty, royalty, than it does her class or vocation, showing she's a mage. And that's borne out here by baby Jaina's costume, which is a lot more like what Jaina is wearing now than what she used to wear when she was leader of the Kirin Tor. Those nostalgic, those days when you're feeling really nostalgic and you put on your old university jumper or something. I feel like the changes Jaina's gone through in the last couple of years, she's obviously more accepting of the Kul Tiran in her now. This is a mission that she's performing for the Alliance after all, but of course she also really wants to rebuild bridges with Kul Tiras for very, very personal reasons too. This blue and gold cloth with white underneath is obviously something that she was dressed in from a very young age. It's obviously symbolic of her position within Kul Tiran society, so it's not a coincidence that she's wearing that again to make her way back home. I mean, obviously the fact that baby Jaina is dressed like this is to establish that they're the same person as well.
Time to go, Jaina.
I love you, Papa.
And as baby Jaina says, I love you, Papa, and runs off, our focus switches to Jaina, who's looking like aghast, really. She's like, yeah, I did love my dad, because I knew that he would do anything for me. And when he proved that by coming to rescue me in Theramore, I betrayed him.
Your loving mother will never forgive you, murderer.
And then we get this predictably terrifying moment. Because like I say, the beginning of this scene was already built using shots and elements from horror movies, so it's already been established in our mind that something scary is going to happen. And as promised, here it is. The ghost of Taliesin Proudmore, who we have seen before, of course, literally accusing Jaina of her crimes. Not the first time we've seen Jaina's psychological ghosts represented as actual ghosts, and I dare say not the last either, but it is very effective and fitting in this seafaring setting. By the way, one of the things I love about all the Kul Tirans is that they are seafaring folk who have English accents, which, you know, I can relate to. I obviously have an English accent, and I know a thing or two about the sea. This is the street that I grew up on. I think think this is one of the reasons Kul Tiras as a setting and Jaina as a character really speaks to me so much. And of course, them all having English accents means it's usually English actors playing them. So I was really keen to find out who actually voices Dalin here, and it's Mark Addy doing the voice here, who is Robert Baratheon in Game of Thrones. Although for me, obviously, he's always the guy from the Full Monty. And Mark Addy is not the only famous Game of Thrones voice actor on the Kul Tiras cast list. And the classic waking up from a dream in a cold sweat shot. And this is why we had that shot of the red candles earlier, is because now we see them, they've burnt all the way down to show the passing of time. It was mere seconds for us, but it's been an entire night of restless sleep for Jaina here. And as we pan out of the map of Kul Tiras, showing us where we are, and we see that black stain reaching out almost like tentacles and covering the northeastern tip of Stormsong Valley in Kul Tiras, black ink like that produced by squid. Now, I know, of course, that Battle for Azeroth is an expansion all about the faction war, and that there's no old gods in Battle for Azeroth. So I'm not saying that there's a dark, gigantic, squid-like underwater presence off the coast of Stormsong Valley there. I'm not saying that. But maybe Blizzard are. Straight away, those two cinematics have a lot of things in common, which serve to highlight the differences between these two stories. They're both about princesses returning home to their island nations. But whereas one, Talanji, has escaped from trouble and is arriving home to a position which is waiting for her, and to be greeted by the whole military might of that nation watching her back as she arrives. In the Jaina cinematic, we see a princess returning in completely different circumstances. She is sailing into trouble. Getting home was the end of the danger for Talanji, but it's the very start of it for Jaina. There's no fanfare, no mighty fleet to welcome her. It's a lot more somber and ominous. I want to talk very quickly about the cutscene that welcomes us into Kul Tiras as well. Even though it's not a cinematic, I think it's quite important to one of the things I want to talk about later. And I love these cutscenes, by the way, because I love the way they're rendered in-game. So it's the right time of day, it's the right weather that was happening. It just happens to be snowing as the scene is taking place. Yours will be completely different. And of course, my character is in it as well, which I think is absolutely brilliant. This is proof, canonically, that my character is Bezies with Jaina Proudmore. And that's all I ever needed. And as we arrive in Borealis here, Jaina's theme music from Mists of Pandaria is playing, which is like some of my favourite music in-game, and also incredibly fitting. Lots of people said how disappointing some of these cutscenes were when they saw them in beta, when they were like completely unfinished, but since they've been like polished a bit and had the music added to them, they're so good. I feel like the music is so important to these. And as Jaina and me are arrested and taken to see Katherine Proudmore and led through the streets, shame, 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 the music changes to Daughter of the Sea, the song that we just heard in the last cinematic, but which now, of course, has a very different meaning. Now it's the song that the people of Kul Tiras sing about Jaina, and you can see that out in force to clap eyes on this incredibly famous person. A mother takes her child out of the way. It's like the opening of Skyrim, and you can see the terror that some of these citizens have when it comes to her. And as me and Jaina face this danger together, because we're pretty tight, it leads into the next cinematic. And there's slightly less thematically going on with this cinematic. It's really just to introduce us to these characters, but there are still some very interesting things I want to point out. So we get our first shot here of Katherine Proudmore and her advisor, Lady Ashvane, two characters that we're going to be seeing a lot of. And here, from the very start, very fittingly, Lady Ashvane shown at Katherine Proudmore's shoulder, establishing straight away this is someone that Katherine trusts and who has some sort of power and influence over the court here.
So, my wayward daughter returns to the kingdom she betrayed.
And more absolutely phenomenal voice acting here. Listen, man, say what you like about us English people, but we say words well. Not me, obviously, I mean other English people. And here we get our first proper glimpse of Lady Ashvane, and you can tell she's a baddie by the way she expresses her face. And this sounds weird, okay, but this is like a thing. The way she kind of moves her face forward and spits her words like that, that's the kind of thing only a real baddie does. So in this little sequence, we're establishing a few things. We're establishing that Lady Ashvane is important enough to make a speech to the people of Kul Tiras while standing alongside the Admiral, Katherine Proudmore. She's actually taking control of proceedings here. She kind of sees herself on a level with Katherine. But perhaps most importantly of all, we see that Lady Ashvane has got an Azerite necklace, because we've seen this before and we know exactly what this is, because just minutes before, when BfA went live and we all piled into Silithus, we got given one of these. We were just told by Magni how powerful and important this is, how dangerous it could be in the wrong hands, and here we see someone who is clearly a baddie wearing it. In the novel Before the Storm, when you hold Azerite, it's described as kind of like enhancing attributes that you already have. I guess that's kind of what it does to Azerite armor. Anyway, but it does that in people as well. So when Sylvanas holds it, she gets all these amazing plans for like war and stuff. When Anduin holds it, he's like, my gosh, I've got all these brilliant ideas for helping people. When like the goblins and the gnome hold it, they suddenly have all this incredible inspiration for making gadgets and stuff. If someone who is already very ambitious and power hungry comes into possession of it, the feeling is that Azerite is going to enhance those characteristics in her. So she's going to become even more ambitious, even more power hungry, even more ruthless. And I think that's what we can see being established in this scene here.
You admit that you were responsible for the deaths of our men. I was.
And this is Jaina owning her past here, accepting responsibility for and presenting herself for what punishment will follow. And she says she's doing it for the Alliance. And that's definitely true, but also far more than that, she's doing it for herself. She has to find peace.
Anything in my power to ease the suffering of Kul Tiras.
And like at the end of the Jaina comic book where she thrusts her sword into the ground of Theramore and swears that she will protect Kul Tiras, here she does it in person. And I don't think there's supposed to be any doubt as to the sincerity of these words. This is clearly something that Jaina feels incredibly strongly.
Katherine, enforce our laws.
And so here we see Lady Ashvane, who is positioned literally on the shoulder of Katherine Proudmore, who is wearing this incredibly prominent Azerite necklace, a necklace which has actually had its brightness and contrast slightly upped in this shot, just to draw our eyes to it even more, literally telling Katherine Proudmore what to do. It's advice, but it's a statement. She doesn't say, you should do this. She literally says, Katherine, enforce our laws, which Katherine Proudmore does.
The punishment for treason is death.
And again, we see the difference in these two homecomings in these cinematics. Whereas getting back to Zandal'alor literally saved Princess Talanji's life because the Kul Tiran fleet destroyed the Alliance vessels behind them. For Jaina, returning home is a death sentence. You get this heartbreaking moment as her father's pendant is ripped from her neck.
No daughter of mine.
And of course, Katherine literally turns her back on her daughter. The words, do what you will, fill Lady Ashvane with delight, because yes, she will do what she will. She will. And very quickly, just before we finish, I want to look very briefly, and not all of, but just at the beginning of the cutscene in Dazal'alor, where you meet King Rastakhan for the first time. So there's just one more comparison that I want to draw. But the first time we meet Rastakhan in this cutscene, the first time we've ever met him in game, he is listening to the advice of one of his subjects, just like, because this is one of the recurring themes in these opening stories as well, is bad, malicious counsel. Katherine Proudmore has Lady Ashvane kind of whispering poison in her ear for her own nefarious purposes. And the first time we meet Rastakhan, he's got the slaver from Vol'dun presenting a case to him. And of course, we've just rescued the blatantly evil Zul. Good. Who will, of course, now take his place back at Rastakhan's side as his advisor. So in this story so far, we have two princesses returning to two homes. Two leaders who are also their parents, both with two pretty shifty advisors. None of which is a coincidence, none of which is me reaching. These are all intentional themes that we're supposed to see coming out of these stories and these cutscenes and these cinematics. And if I wanted to be really awkward about it, I would say, why is Blizz making bad counsel and bad advice a theme of these stories? Could it be that maybe we, the players, are also, unbeknownst to us, receiving bad counsel, malicious counsel, which is designed to lead us into trouble? But then I think that can't be the case because there's only one person we are receiving any counsel from, and I trust that guy, like, loads. He's made of diamond, after all. How can you not trust a man made of diamond? No. And then I realised that's a terrible idea and I shouldn't have even brought it up because, you know, that's definitely not what's happening. There is so much more that I want to talk about from what's happened in these first few hours of playing Battle for Azeroth. The rest of it, I guess, will have to wait until the weekly reset. Because frankly, I just want to go ahead and play it again now. But I really wanted to get this appreciation and analysis of these opening cinematics out there. Because not being a streamer, being a video maker, this is the only way that we get to kind of share this excitement of experiencing the expansion for the first time with you guys. So hopefully you've enjoyed sort of listening to my thoughts on it. What do you guys think? Am I completely reaching? Have I completely misrepresented spotted the themes in those cinematics? Is there some very obvious imagery or references that I've completely missed? I feel like those missiles from the Zandalari ships shooting up into the air and Talanji having her arms out here, I feel like that's a direct reference to something that I just can't bring to mind right now. So if you can answer that, that'd be awesome. And which story are you enjoying most? The Alliance side or the Horde side? Which city do you prefer? I have to say, I was all about Borealis all the way up through beta, and yesterday when I arrived there, it was just incredible and mind-blowing and stirring and emotional and so well presented and introduced with little cutscenes which we'll look at in the weekly reset. But then when I did the Horde side this morning, the arrival into Dazal'alor is just as exciting and just as epic, and I'm basically just having the best time ever. And I'm going to go back and play it right now. But thank you for joining us today. If you liked this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make these videos happen. And I'm not even joking, without them and their help, we would produce less than half of the amount of videos that we do. Thank you so much. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Mark Addy. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.